Okay, so coming at you one more time, you got distributive property and combining like terms. We're still going to apply these properties of equality. We are really hitting these properties of equality, okay? So that is the key. You can use any of these properties, okay, to manipulate these equations, all right? You just got to make sure you do it to both expressions and that you're trying to really figure out what is the inverse operation that is going to help me isolate the variable in question. So, distributive property. So I've done a video about distributive property before, but what we're really trying to focus on here is how to utilize it with our equations. I wrote this one twice because we can do two things. This is the more complicated equations get, the more that you can actually reorder some of these properties and get the same answer, which is why like a teacher telling you how to do it one way, it starts to kind of be wrong. It starts to become like, use your creativity. You should be thinking on your own and trying to figure out, all right, what property can I use here and am I using it correctly? All right, so for example, maybe what you might do is you might say, okay, I see here, there's a number here and before the parentheses, I can subtract that. And you can totally do that. So we can subtract 6. And I apologize if it's kind of small. All right, so now we haven't touched that parentheses at all. What I have done is I've done -9 minus 6, which is -15. Okay? Maybe you don't even want to do the distributive property. Maybe you're like, hold on a second, wait. I'm multiplying that 3 times everything in those parentheses. Maybe I just use the inverse property, inverse operation and divide. Okay, so I'm going to divide by 3 because 3 divided by 3 is just 1. So that could simplify things. So then we get x plus 1 is equal to -5. We are going to loop you and move you down. We're going to need some more room. Then it's a one-step equation. I'm adding 1 to my variable. So we're going to subtract 1 from my variable. Okay, so that gives me, subtract 1. That becomes 0, and then -5, -1. -5, subtract 1. That gives me -6. Okay, so there's one way to do it. Okay, I just totally bypassed the distributive property altogether. You'll find that won't be possible with other problems. So like this one, you can't bypass the distributive property because this has a variable term. This does not. So if I subtracted 3y, I can't combine those. So now I'm stuck and I still got to use the distributive property. I guess you're not technically stuck. Let's show you what that looks like. So first, let's apply the distributive property, just so we remember how. We're going to multiply the number on the outside of the parentheses times both numbers on the inside. Okay? I'm going to make this 3 a negative, just so that you see what happens when I multiply by a negative inside these parentheses. So check this out. -3 times x, that becomes -3x. -3 times 1, that becomes -3. And then plus 6, and that equals 9. Okay? Now we're going to simplify it. So I got -3x. -3 plus 6 are like terms because they don't have a variable at all. So that's -3 plus 6, so it's +3. We're going to get some like terms that have a variable up here, and I'll show you in a minute. So then we still have 9 here. So now you solve it like a two-step equation. All right, so inverse of adding is subtracting. I don't know if you've noticed this, but you've had to do that adding, subtracting properties first before you can do the multiplying and dividing. Okay, see, we did our adding, subtracting first before we do our multiplying, dividing. Okay, and then we were able to do adding, subtracting, but that was because that was in the parentheses. So here we go, -3x equals 6, and then divide by -3. Divide by -3, that's an equal sign. This becomes x, and this becomes -2. Okay, what? I must have messed something up. Hold on a second. No, I didn't, because I changed this to negative, whereas I would have got the same exact answer if I hadn't. Okay, so that should help you at least with those properties. I thought I messed something up, but because I changed that number, I did get a different answer. All right, let's try this one. This is combining like terms. So we have the distributive property. Okay, so here's how this is going to go. First, let's do our distributive property. Okay, because I could technically, I said I could subtract that 3y. So let's see what happens when I subtract the 3y. I cannot combine those. Okay, and this lies on the other side of my equal sign, which is why I'm going to subtract from both of these expressions. So 13 minus 3y equals negative 2y minus 4. And then when I subtracted, those canceled out. Essentially, those are 0 now. That doesn't help. So let's go to the distributive property. Let's see what we can do. So we got negative 2 times y and times minus 4. But that minus 4, remember, negative, minus are synonyms. So that 4 is negative. So let's see. We got 13 minus 3y. And then we got negative 2. So it's negative 2y. And that's negative 2 times 4 is positive 8. Okay? Now I have some like terms. This is great. Now I have this negative 3y and negative 2y, and I can use inverse operations to kind of get them on the same side. So this is subtraction. So let's add 3y. I could add 2y. Well, don't do that. Let's do that. Let's add 2y. That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I could do either one. Either way. Hold on. So 13 doesn't change because I can't combine 2y with 13. But I got minus 3y plus 2y. That leaves me with minus 1y. This cancels out and becomes 0. Okay, some people will cross those out. That's fine. You can do that because they're exactly alike. That's fine. So 13 minus y. Well, let's subtract 13. Okay, let's subtract 13. And we'll get negative y is equal to negative 5. Okay? We're not done yet though. That y is negative. We got to divide by negative 1. Because that way y won't be negative anymore. But if we do that, we also have to do it here. And that would make this y positive. It also happens to make this positive as well. You don't want the y to be left negative. You need that to be positive. That's also mathematical convention. That's just it's kind of like closing the door when you walk into a room, or turning the light off when you leave the room, or taking your shoes off when you go into somebody's house. They're kind of just polite things to do. So when you do math, the polite thing to do is leave that variable positive. All right. So we're going to leave it like this. I do have another one to show you, and it's called getting rid of fractions. And so we're going to go into that in the next clip. So, all right, good luck, and I'll see you in the next one.